What is up, guys? Welcome to the Tony and Dakota podcast. Today we got a local Fort Wayne guest that I think does a lot of deals down in Indianapolis. But Tony's going to introduce him.
This is Brett Snodgrass. He has built rental portfolios. He's flipped and wholesaled a lot of properties, especially down in Indianapolis. He's been on the Bigger Pockets podcast. We just got done being on his podcast, and I looked at a little bit of his social media. I was stalking him to figure out some more things about him. It looks like the majority of what he's promoting right now is Iron Deep, which is a program for men. Specifically, you go out to the West Coast, looks like Utah. There's some different, desert area, fun places to go. But just to help individuals connect more with their faith, this is Brett Snodgrass.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Tony, Dakota.
Man.
What's going on? Excited to be here. Locals. I don't get in the studio very much in Fort Wayne, so you guys are legends, living the dream.
Yeah.
Have me on.
Have you heard about us before?
I did. Yeah. Actually, one of our private lenders that I've worked with for years mentioned you guys.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, you guys got to know Dakota and Tony with LTD, and that was honestly probably a couple years ago, and I didn't reach out or anything, and you guys just kind of reached out, podcasting, and welcome to the podcast train. I've been doing it for a while, so thanks for being on my podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Love it.
Have you been thinking about investing in real estate?
It's not like what you see on HGTV.
We created a course to show you how to really invest and create a profitable flipping and wholesaling business.
We show you where to find the money, how to find the deals, and how to negotiate the deals.
We go over live sales calls, including negotiations, scripts, role-playing, and so much more.
Everything that you need to know to flip houses is in this course. And if there's a video that we didn't make that you want, we'll make it for you.
This knowledge has made us well over $1 million, and it's available right now for $997. Click the link below.
Buy the course. So how did you originally get started? Because we know that, or it looked like you spent a lot of time in Indianapolis. Is that kind of where you grew up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, actually, I've always been in Indiana, but my dad was a high school teacher, and he was a high school basketball coach. So we moved around a lot. This was back in the 90s, and that was when it was one class. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the movie Hoosiers, you guys ever seen that?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, that was kind of like my house growing up. My dad was basketball coach for 25 years, teacher. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and a very middle class family. But yeah, we lived mostly in southern Indiana. But how I really got into just kind of real estate was I graduated from Huntington University. I played basketball in college, and then I was supposed to be a teacher, so I got an education degree, and I taught for about 1 year. And I said, you know what, this isn't for me. And I wanted to be in business, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So just started reading some books, just like everybody else, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, how to be a millionaire real estate investor. And that really just kind of got me hooked. And I knew a guy doing some land flips down in southern Indiana, and started working with him, honestly, as kind of a bird dog, and found him some deals, and started making some money. And that really kind of got me interested in real estate. And then we bought our first house, me and my dad together, in 2007. So it's been quite the ride. About 16 years now.
Wow.
And we've done a few thousand, I guess, properties. It's been pretty fun.
Jeez, I didn't know you were like the OG.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it was a blessing in my life, a good time, and we've had our ups and downs throughout the years. Got into kind of wholesaling before wholesaling was even a term. I mean, back in 2007, no one talked about wholesaling. It wasn't even anything out there like it is today. So it was kind of one of those things. We just bought and cleaned out and sold properties. And this is when you could buy bank-owned properties for literally pennies on the dollar, and buying really cheap properties. Our first house was $9,000.
Wow.
And we sold for 15, and 3 weeks later, and then the next year we did about 100 and stuff like that. So
Jeez.
It's been fun.
What grade did you teach?
Yeah, so I student taught second grade, and so I was supposed to be an elementary school teacher. And then I also have a high school math degree, so I taught inner city Fort Wayne
Wow.
math when I was about 23 or 4. at Elmhurst High School. So did that for about a year, and then I said, man, this is hard. So people say, like, wholesaling, real estate versus teaching, and I honestly think teaching it's much harder. So, and you get paid a lot less money.
Pulling data lists like vacant houses, mortgage foreclosures, and tax delinquent properties is important to direct-to-seller marketing.
Batch Leads is the main platform where we store our sellers' data and skip trace owners for their phone numbers, emails, and addresses.
On other platforms, you end up having to pay twice for the same contact if you've already skip traced it. My favorite thing about Batch Leads is that if you skip traced a contact once, you never have to pay for that contact again.
Batch Leads has SMS texting campaigns, direct mail marketing, and Driving for Dollars app integrated in a simple-to-use interface.
Click the link below and try Batch Leads today.
What did you think about, or did you end up moving to like Dayton, Ohio for a little bit too? Because the research that I did, it displayed that as a potential.
Yeah, I didn't move to Dayton, but so when we first got started, we were buying a lot of bank-owned properties. So we were looking for different markets. So we did Indianapolis, and then other cities that we found were Cincinnati and then Dayton. So we did 3 markets between 2007 and maybe 2011. Cincinnati, Dayton, and Indianapolis. And then we actually ventured down to Florida for a while. So we were buying in Lehigh Acres, Fort Myers, Orlando. This was back in, you can buy, again, pennies on the dollar. I remember we were buying houses literally in Lehigh Acres, 2 years old. So this is around 2009. These houses were built in 2007, about 1,200, 1,500 square feet. We were buying them for $45,000.
Wow.
In 2009. And that was crazy times. I mean, times have changed, but so I'd fly down to Florida every 2 weeks to look at these projects, and I was single, so it was fun.
Wow.
So when you think about some of those markets, do you wish that you'd kept properties? Do you have any regrets? Because I know it was like 10, 15 years ago where you were like, oh man, we should have done this, could have done that, should have done this, could have done that. Yeah, I definitely wish I would have kept some properties. I mean, there's properties literally in Indianapolis that, again, we buy for $5,000 that now are worth $250 in certain areas. Yeah, those houses in Florida, we buy for $45, we sell for $55, and now they're probably worth $200. So yes, I didn't have a whole lot of money and experience back then. So really, we were just kind of looking for that quick nickel and just trying to get in and get out, and didn't have a lot of podcasts to listen to about real estate, didn't have a lot of education. So we were just kind of doing, hard knocks and doing what we could. But yeah, hindsight is, if I knew that 10 years later we would have been worth a lot more money, I wish I would have probably kept some. And I did. I mean, I started collecting some rentals, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So those have done well, not to the extent, but what they were in 2008 and 2009. But yeah, I've learned along the way, and that's how it is. I always believe that, I think you guys might have said this, is you have to build active income. So I was always just active, like, quick nickels, let's make a lot of money, let's get in, get out, not a lot of risk. But then you also have to build that passive wealth, and that's what I've really learned. So now I build active, so we still do flipping, wholetailing, but then we put up rentals, seller financing as well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think is the big difference? Well, actually, let me ask you this. Who are you buying those properties from? The 2-year-old ones, were you buying them from the bank? Were you buying them from individuals or like landlords and stuff? Who are you buying them from?
Yeah. So this is crazy. I mean, you're in this business so long, things shift and change so much. And I've even been preaching that today. I was talking to someone today about things are going to change again. And we have to be ready, because maybe the marketing that worked 2 years ago doesn't work today. We might have to go back to certain things that we used to do. So back then, literally our system was this. We would look at a bunch of MLS properties. We would put in 200 offers a month, and we'd get 10 accepted, all MLS, all bank-owned properties. And we'd sell those to our investors. That's what we used to do for 3 to 4 or 5 years. That stopped working around 2010, 11, 12. So then we started fixing up and flipping. And then we did that for about 3 or 4 years. And that was hard. That's hard work. I mean, you guys know, flipping properties, and me and dad and mom, we would get in there and I'd be doing the work and putting in cabinets and sanding floors. And that was hard work. So then in 2014, I went back into wholesaling, but the market had changed. And that's when we had to go to private individual sellers. So really the first few years, it was all bank owned MLS. And then since 2014, as you guys know, it was direct mail, texting, cold calling, whatever, direct to seller. And that's what it's been for the last, 8 years, 9 years. Now, what are we going to do if things shift back? I mean, these are things I'm kind of like thinking around. We're in a change right now. We're like, okay, what's going to be next? Is MLS going to come back? Right? I mean, that's what I'm saying is we start listings are going to start increasing. Could we go back to doing those offers on the MLS eventually? Mm-hmm. Will bank-owned properties come back? Could we go back to the courthouse and go to sheriff sales? Will that come back? Texting used to never be a thing 2 or 3 years ago. Now, is that going to still be around? So I think in this market, we have to constantly pivot, constantly shift. I've shifted probably 6 or 7 times in the whole 16 years that I've been doing it.
How do you know when the right time to shift is?
I think obviously I think there's change in the market right now, right? We've been shaken up a little bit. The interest rates are shifting, changing. We're seeing more listings on the market, so that's kind of shifting a little bit. Some of the marketing tactics, we're tracking everything. So it's like, okay, I mean, I used to be able, when I first got in direct mail, I used to be able to send out 1,000 letters and get a deal. Mm-hmm. Those days are almost gone. Like, can you really just, okay, I'm going to send out 1,000 letters and get a deal? You can't do that as much. I mean, some people are spending 3, 4, 5,000. I've heard a guy today, he spent 9,000 to get one deal. Wow. Used to be you could spend $500. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of shifted. So, we're constantly tracking things. So we're always kind of shifting internally with our marketing. But then, we're just tracking again, listings on the MLS. Are there's more listings? Are the days on the market, like, the last 2 or 3 years, list them on the MLS, fly off. Mm-hmm. Multiple offers, crazy. Now are you starting to see things that are sitting for 90, 100 days? When you start to see stuff sitting for 90 to 100 days, that's when maybe you could put in a lower offer and have potential to get that accepted. So I think, just constantly tracking your data, your marketing, what's working, what's not working is stuff that we're just all the time tracking.
Are you letting deals fall through the cracks because you don't have good systems in place?
We've been there before, and honestly, we've tried several different CRMs, and RE Simply has been the absolute best.
RE Simply tracks your KPIs, does automatic follow-ups for you, and even records incoming phone calls.
The system is very easy to use, and honestly, it has more features than we even know what to do with.
If you're looking for a great CRM, try RE Simply today.
Click the link in the description below.
Check it out now.
Do you have a system that tracks it all, or how do you track it, and then how much do you spend in marketing now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, honestly, for the past 2 or 3 years, we were averaging anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 a month in marketing. Okay. So we would be doing TV ads, direct mail ads, or just direct mail, texting, cold calling. We'd be buying lists from companies like Aldantic, 80/20 REI. So we spent a few thousand there. So like used to be, again, things have shifted. We'd have to find our own lists. We'd have to go and figure out these people are behind on taxes, and we'd have to manually create lists. These people don't take care of their properties. They have fines against them from the city. Let's manually create this list. Now you have these companies doing it for you, and that's awesome. So we were spending about $30 to $35 a month. We have backed that off. Honestly, we're only spending about, just in the past 2 or 3 months, we backed it off to about 12, or maybe half that, 12, 15, just because we've had some internal transitions and we've had to let a couple people go. So we just, again, we don't have the bandwidth to do $30,000 a month right now in marketing. But that's been our average for the last few years. And now we're like, okay, what's working? How do we track it? We honestly, we don't have a big system that really tracks it. I mean, we use CallRail as our calling system, so we know, where the calls are coming from. We use Salesforce as our CRM system, so we know things get tagged, which marketing, it came from. So we have certain systems like that. And then we just see, this is how many leads we got. This is where the deals came from. And we mostly track our cost per deal. So we say, okay, this is how much it costs per deal from
How much
this,
does it cost
from
per
this
deal?
source.
Like each one, just
Yeah.
roughly.
It depends on the source. But, if we kind of go through last year, it might, and sometimes I use it as we put in $1, how many dollars do we get back? A lot of times we'll do 3 to 1. So we'll put in $1 and get 3 back
Okay.
on certain sources. Now, certain sources are more than that. I mean, texting has been, last year, I think we put in $1, we got 16 back.
Wow.
But it's, it's a very cheap source, but will that still be around? I mean, there's some things going on with that you just got to be careful on the texting sources. TV's really expensive. So yeah, it just kind of depends on what's working.
What would you say, like, overall, your average cost per lead is? Do you know that?
Mm-hmm. I usually go off per deal, honestly. So like per lead, and we do track that, but I don't have that in front of me. But per deal, yeah, it's been about put in $1, we get 3 back.
So like, would you say your average like cost per deal is like $3,000?
Yeah, about
Okay.
3,000. Yeah.
Okay.
Between 3 and 4 usually is where we're landing.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you licensed?
Yeah, I
Okay.
am. Yeah. So
I thought I'd seen like it was like Indiana Luxury Homes, one of the previous LLCs, and like you had some LLCs
Man.
that were
did
specifically
some research.
those were
Went on the
specifically
corporate.
targeting
Yeah.
the regular real estate market. So how much traditional business do you do? And would you say that you're more of like an investor, or would you say that you're more of a realtor? Like what specifically do you brand yourself as?
Yeah, we're investors. So really the only reason why I got my broker's license was because, again, back between 2007 and 11, we were putting in a lot of MLS offers. And I was using an agent. So I hired an agent and I said, here's what we want to do. We want to put in 200 offers a month. We'll get, 10 accepted and you'll get the commissions off that. So then I checked and I think she made maybe $100,000 that year just from us. Right. And I was like, wow, I want to make $100,000. So we just got our license so we could put in our own offers. And that's really the whole point. And I've had my license now for, I think 12, 13 years. But we are investors. I don't use it for retail. I don't ever list anyone's houses. We only list our own. And but it really helps us because we do a lot of the wholesaling. So we take down properties, clean them out, and then a lot of times we will list them. And again, we'll list them under our own name. So if you see our properties listed, they're ours.
Nice.
So that's what we use it for. And we use it to get MLS access so we can check comps and do that sort of thing. So
How many employees do you have? You talk like you have a team.
yeah. So we fluctuated, honestly, and we've been up to maybe, I think our highest number, we were at 12, 13 employees. Now we have, I think, like five local, and then we also work with a lot of virtual assistants.
Okay.
So we have 4 virtual assistants too. So
What's their roles and what's your role?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm in this transition. So yeah, if you heard a little bit of my story or listen to our podcast, so about 3 years ago, I stepped out of the business just completely.
Okay.
I had a guy named Brett Snodgrass. He was a teacher. Hired him. He kind of ranked up through the ranks. I lived in Indianapolis. I moved to Fort Wayne for family. So that was just a huge transition in my own life. And I hired him as COO. So he was running all the operations. I was still CEO. And then right before COVID hit in 2020, I was just kind of burnt out, honestly. I've been doing this 14 years or so. And I was living up in Fort Wayne. We were doing everything in Indianapolis. And just kind of burnt out. Honestly, I was like, man, I'm kind of just want to take a break for a while. So I offered Brian a CEO position. And I said, I want to sit in the owner's box. And if you think about sports teams, I don't call the plays. I don't run the teams. I don't go to the meetings. I just sit in the owner's box and root the team on. And that's where I've been at the last 3 years.
Okay.
About 2 months ago, Brian got offered a full-time position with another company and was kind of transitioning out. And I just kind of had made that decision that I think it was time for me to come back in. with the market the way it was. And so I've been back in as CEO the last two months.
Wow.
So I'm kind of in that weird transition season. But what do I do now? I run the meetings. I run our leadership meetings. I do the marketing, so I kind of make some decisions on that. And that's really kind of my role. I mean, I lead, and I just pour into the team, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and just kind of that leadership role now. So that's my role. But
what are your meetings? How often do you guys meet? What are your meetings about? And then who's on the leadership team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we meet as a leadership team once a week. So we do it typically over Zoom. Since I'm in Fort Wayne, they're in Indy. We do it once a month in person. The first Friday of the month, we do it in person. So I drive down tomorrow to do that. What do those look like? Yeah, I mean, pretty much we use Asana. So we use a project management system, and we're just going over high level things. So we kind of follow the traction model, the EOS model. Mm-hmm. So we're setting 90-day rocks. What's going well? What do we want to achieve these 90 days? We also go over our numbers. Here's how much money we're making. Here's how much we're spending. Making adjustments there. So yeah, just really high level. We talk about the team, who's doing what they're supposed to be doing, why if numbers are down. We talk about problems. So just a lot about that stuff.
Who's on the leadership team?
Yeah. So right now it's me and Randy Placencia. He is our dispositions manager. He's also kind of our sales director. So he does our dispo, where he sells all the properties. Plus he trains our acquisitions team.
Wow.
So he's pretty busy guy. And then our head acquisitions guy is in that meeting as well. So just three people.
Okay. So how many salespeople do you guys have then, or how many acquisitions guys? Is it just the one?
So right now, just the one, our acquisition manager. Then we got 2 lead managers too. So these lead managers are the ones, answering the phones. They're doing a lot of the groundwork on all that. Like I said, we're in a big transition with our team. Mm-hmm. We typically have 3 acquisitions managers. 2 of them just transitioned out just within the last 3 months. So we are very lean right now than what we typically are. Hence why we've lessened the marketing and all that. So will we grow back to 3? Probably in the next 6 months or so. But right now we're the leanest that we've been in probably the last 7 or 8 years.
I like it. Can you describe for us the different roles of, like, let's say the acquisition manager versus the lead manager? So obviously, what are their roles, and then how are they compensated too?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want specifics on like percentages?
If you could, that'd be awesome. Because I'm learning this just to all right, who do we need next, and how do we set this thing up? Because that's what I'm always trying to figure out too. Is we want to set up a successful business, and then we're getting to that place where we're hiring multiple acquisitions guys, but then the roles are kind of skewed where they're texting, they're cold calling, they're doing all this stuff. Then they got to nurture the lead. Then they're actually closing it. Then they're locking it up. And then I'm like, okay, then I got to be the manager, the closer or whatever. But then eventually I want to not do that too. So then I'm like, who's the next position? How do you compensate them? We have a dispositions person. Could that be the same person? And just figuring out the best way to structure it. I always like hearing other people's structure. So if you go over percentages, that'd be helpful, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. So let's just start with the acquisition managers. So our acquisition managers typically make 10% of the gross profit on any deal they get. Okay. So if you make $10,000 on that deal, they make $1,000.
Okay.
The net profit, you mean?
Yeah.
You said
pretty
gross.
Much. Yeah, the net profit. So after we pay the expenses for that particular deal, so we don't count any marketing against that deal or anything like that. So that goes on a different. But so if we buy a deal for $100,000, we spend $5,000 on whatever we're doing with it, closing costs, clean out. Now we have 105 in it, and then we sell it for 115. Let's just say we make $10,000. They make 10% on that. Okay. On that profit. So acquisition managers 10%. Now we give them a bonus if we make a certain amount of money. So it used to be if we make more than $15,000 on that particular property, they get a 5% increase.
Wow.
So that's so they make 15% on that. Now we did change that to now 20,000 or more. So if we make 20,000 or more on that particular property, that's where the 5% increase comes in. So so they can make anywhere from 10 to 15% on their particular deals. That's acquisition managers. Lead managers are typically hourly roles, so they could range anywhere from $10 to $15 an hour. We typically give them bonuses too, incentives. Typically their incentives are set if they get appointments set or walkthroughs set, or converted leads. So we'll pay them a certain amount of money, a small bump, typically a flat, $50, $100 if they get certain things done, appointments set or converted leads. Lead managers are the ones working their phones. So they're the ones answering all the calls that come in. They're their very first point of contact. So their job is really phones, basically. And they also do some of the texting for us. So they're not out. They don't do any walkthroughs. They don't do any of that. So they can live anywhere in the United States. One of them actually lives in Philippines or Colombia. One of them's a VA. One of them does live in Fort Wayne here, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they don't have to live in the local area. So typically they're an hourly role with a bump. Dispositions manager, I'd say dispositions, honestly, for the last 2 or 3 years has been an easy job. Throw it out there, not hard to sell. It's harder now. They got to really work those investor leads now. So typically I'd say anywhere from 3% of the deal to 5% of the deal that they typically get. So that's typically some of the percentages. You can do base too. Some people I've seen do, instead of 10% on deals, they do 7% with a 2,000 base, on acquisitions, stuff like that. So I think it just depends. But we do full commissions mostly.
Yep.
So
I like it. Honestly, our structures are very, very similar. Bonus structure is a little bit different, but it's very similar, so that's cool.
Yeah.
When you're doing dispo, have you found that MLS is the most effective, or are you looking for investors to wholesale deals to before they hit the MLS?
Yeah, things change, things shift. It's just the same thing. You've got to be prepared to shift. Last 2-3 years, investors send out to investors, they buy it, done deal. Hedge funds, send out to hedge funds, they're buying it, done deals. What happens when hedge funds stop buying? Like right now, hedge funds have paused. A lot of them have paused. They've stopped buying. So a lot of these companies out there, they put all their eggs in their hedge fund basket. Oh crap, they can't sell any properties anymore. So for us, last 2-3 years, investor list, now MLS. MLS is still buying, and a lot of our stuff gets sold, honestly, in buyers. Investors have paused.
Yep.
So you have to kind of shift. We do a lot of seller financing too. That has increased dramatically. So typically before, we might sell one seller financing property per month. Now sometimes it's like 4 or 5 because interest rates has increased. So a lot of people love to buy it with us as the bank, seller financing. So that's a model that's really been helpful for us too.
How do you sell that seller financing deal? How do you structure that? And then is your dispo manager in charge of that as well?
Yeah, so our dispo manager structures it that way. Most of our seller financing deals come through agents. So we'll put kind of an option on there to say,
On
hey,
MLS?
MLS or not. We have relationships with them, and they might list it on their website or something. How's it structured? We're typically asking 25-30% down.
Okay.
So these are not small chunks of change. These buyers have a significant amount of money in them. And then we're typically charging 12% interest.
12? Okay.
Yeah. And so we do it legit. We go through title company. We do some underwriting on that particular buyer.
Do you use a company for that?
There is a company called, I think it's called theunderwriter.com. So if you're ever interested in having someone underwrite your seller financing deal, I think that's the name of it, but Google theunderwriter.com, and they actually have a third-party kind of loan originator that they'll do it for you.
Wow.
Yeah, to kind of get you through those hoops.
Do you have a servicer as well?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend a loan servicer. We use a company out of New Mexico called Mountain States Escrow. A couple other ones that we've used is Allied Servicing, FCI, are a couple big ones. But yeah, loan servicers all the way. I would not do it myself.
Okay.
So ours are structured very, very good. So it's structured. They put 30% down, 12% interest. We set up with the loan servicer. We have the borrower pay the fee. So the loan servicer charges a fee. Typically, it's anywhere from $10 to $20 a month. The borrower pays it, so we don't pay it. And then they automatically would draw the money out of the borrower's account, and they automatically deposit it in our account. So there's no checks. There's nothing to chase. First of the month, money's there, and the loan servicer tracks it all. Plus, they got a portal. You can go right in, see the history and everything. So
I love it. So we actually have one that we're gonna do this. So I have multiple questions. Man, I love getting this information from you guys. It feels like now I'm like I'm not even interviewing like an interview. I'm just like, all right, dude, now we gotta know all this stuff because this is important.
Yeah.
So for is this mostly multifamily or is this mostly single family or is it a mix of both? Does that really matter? Because we have some stuff that I'm like, this would be great for a seller finance, but it's not selling on the market right now, and I think it's going to cash flow really well. So does it work either way?
Yeah. So most of our stuff, it can work either way. Most of our stuff is single family.
Okay.
Most of it is investors. I mean, typically we try to sell to investors. We have them sign an affidavit that they won't live in the property because there are some hoops to jump through if they're owner occupants. Now, to be honest with you, just on this podcast, do we check up and see if they are living there? I mean, I'm not sure. Some of them might be, honestly. But we have them sign an affidavit that they won't live in the property at the closing.
Okay.
So most of ours are single family. And most of them, some of them sell through the MLS, but some of them sell, honestly, through Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
And again, there's people out there, if you're selling a $100,000 property, they're putting down like $30,000. And a lot of times we don't fix up the properties that much. These aren't like rehabbed properties, so they actually go in and they fix up the property. So we'll sell it for 100. They'll put 30% down, 12% interest. Then they'll fix up the property. So now the property's worth like 160. So you get the point.
Yeah, that's actually going to be my next question is the reason that we never wanted to get that much down. I love having a lot of money down, but then something that we always thought about was now they have substantial equity in the property. Have you ever had to deal with that, or is that something that doesn't really even matter for you guys?
So I guess my question to you guys would be, why would you not want them to have substantial equity? Because honestly, I look at it from a bank's point of view. If a bank's point of view is wouldn't they want substantial equity in the property in case you get the property back?
Yeah.
So that makes question.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually one of our mentors does lease options, and he makes it so that by year 2, they kind of have to figure out their mortgage, and he gets them with a mortgage broker beforehand, sets them up for success, wants them to be successful, and then at the end of it, he gives them a credit for every on-time payment, and that's how he makes sure that they're consistently paying on time. However, we've always heard that if you buy a property for $100,000 and you put $20,000 down, immediately you have created ownership interest in the property to the point where the seller cannot take it back anymore without taking you through the full mortgage foreclosure process.
Yeah.
And so that was always something that mentors of ours are like, well, just have them put 10% down and then make sure that when it balloons, they don't have that much equity, and put it in the contract that they can't pay any more than their regular monthly payment. That way they don't get so far ahead of you that if you ever do have to foreclose on them, it's not a pain in the butt. You can just have them sign a deed in lieu of foreclosure, get it done within a couple months instead of going through the year to a year and a half. We've had lawyers for other stuff, and we're seriously kind of done dealing with lawyers at this point. Just kidding. We're definitely going to end up
I actually have a trial coming up in a few weeks that's been since 17.
Oh my gosh.
So,
and one other reason though too is also whenever they have substantial equity, a lot of times their liens will now attach to the property if we go to take it back. So then if we go to sell it, then now the liens are attached because then now they're in equitable position. So that's what we've thought about, ran into, but I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think it depends on what your motive and goals are. So my goals are not to take properties back.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. If your goal is to possibly take properties back, then I would ask for $500 down. I don't know. I mean, because you see guys with signs up to say, "Hey, get in this property, $500 down."
For $0 down.
Yeah. How many properties they take back? Probably most of them.
Yeah.
Right. I've probably done 500 of these over the past 10 years. I've taken back 2.
Oh wow.
So our foreclosure rate is hardly non-existent.
Okay.
Have I had to foreclose on properties? Yes. Have I got my money back? Yes. Because here's what happens here in Indianapolis. So you take the property back, it goes through, it is quite the process. I hire an attorney. They do everything for me. Costs about $5,000, maybe 6 months. Let's just say something like that. It goes to the sheriff's sale, and then the property goes up for bid. And you're the first one, just like a bank, you put the minimum bid on there, right? So your minimum bid has to be your loan amount plus all your attorney fees plus all the late fees, everything, right? So let's just say a guy forecloses, they owe $100,000. So it goes through a 6 months process. Let's say you pay $10,000, attorney fees, everything. So your minimum bid is $110,000. Let's say the property's worth $150,000. A guy goes to the sheriff's sale. Hey, bidding starts 110. Yeah, I'm gonna bid 110. Okay, and then you get your money back. And that's it. So the sheriff's sale writes you a check, and that typically is what happens.
If somebody else bids it up to 150, you're like, okay, I'll just let it go. I don't need it back.
Yeah.
And then they own the property. They get a sheriff's deed. They can worry about all of the liens and judgments and everything against the title, because the sheriff's deed is supposed to, take everything off. Yeah, they need to quiet
Now,
title
why
it.
do banks end up with properties? Banks end up with properties because they go to the sheriff's sale and there's no equity. So the bank gets it because they owe way too much money and nobody wants to buy it. If it's $100,000 that they owe, but the property's only worth $100,000, well, nobody's going to buy it. So my point is just kind of what's your goal? Yes, if you get 20% of the property, but I'd really check the Indiana laws too, because I believe that my attorney said, I can't verbatim say this, but I think that she said they lessened the percent amount. It might even be if they get 10%, you have to foreclose, something like that now.
Oh, wow.
So I would check the laws on it, but I think, what's your goal? My goal is not to take back properties. And if I do take back the property, I want equity because my goal is just to get my money back at the end of the day.
Yeah, our goal is definitely not to take it back either. I mean, if you set up all this stuff on the front end, like, we don't want it back, but that was something that we always thought about. But yeah, that's something that, honestly, we have a couple properties that we're probably going to have to do that with because they're not selling. And one we bought sight unseen. It's off of Maples in Fort Wayne. The other one's a 5-unit in Huntington. And it's a cash cow if somebody wanted to actually get people in there, but it's a lot of work for us to screen the tenants, put them in there, and dude, we don't have a property management company out there, and I'm like, dude, we don't want to do all that. We just want to make $20,000 and move on if we can. But I think that'll be a great deal for seller financing. So I think that's how we'll list it. So have you listed anything on MLS, or do you think you should just list it on Facebook Marketplace? What do you think is the most effective way to do it?
Yeah. So, like I said, we have a couple of agents, and they list them so we list them. A couple agents buy a lot of them that particular way, but they actually list them on Facebook Marketplace. So I guess if it were up to me, I would start with Facebook Marketplace. Okay. In our listings, we put in the description possible seller financing available, and we kind of leave it there. We don't put a lot of, I don't put a lot of numbers in there. We don't do any of that. Then they ask, oh, I see seller financing available. What's that mean? Oh, okay, 30% down, 12% interest. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's all we say.
I think between the pages that we manage too, we could put it on the FSBO group. We could put it on the real estate investor group. Then because we own it, we could put it on Facebook Marketplace to the general public, and then also on the MLS. And between those four, we should have it sold within a month.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. I don't know if Raylene's doing that, but we should definitely make a checklist for on every single property. It's got to be on Facebook Marketplace because that gets so much attention.
Yeah.
Last question that I have is, do you have a balloon on that, or are you collecting 12% the whole AM?
Yeah. So typically, if you're selling to investors, you can do balloons. If you're selling to owner occupants, you're not supposed to do balloons. Okay. So I would watch that. Typically, we do the full AM. Now,
what's your AM, 20?
So typically, it really just depends. We typically want at least $500 a month of their payment. So some of these are a little lower priced. And so to get $500 a month, it's only a 7-year AM or an 8-year AM. But higher price. We want at least $500, number one. But yeah, we'll do 15 to 20 typically at 12% interest. So here's the thing about 12% interest too. I used to say 12% interest, and other investors would be like, 12% interest? That's a ripoff. That's crazy. Why would I pay 12% interest when I can go to the bank and get 4% interest? And I'm like, well, hey, go to the bank. That's awesome. I'll sell it to you cash all day at 4% interest. You do that, that's awesome. Guess what? 12% interest in these days is not that bad because you go to the bank now and it's 8.
Yeah.
So plus they're charging appraisal fees, origination fees, other fees, junk fees. So by the time you add all their fees, it might even be 12% interest the first year or two because I don't charge a lot of the other extra fees on top of that because typically we're already making our spread, right? We buy a property for 100 and sell for 130. We're already making our spread plus 30K spread plus 12% interest. So anyways, so I would really start talking to people because people get hung up on the interest rate, 12% interest. And I'm like, okay, well, here's ours, 12% interest. But here, this other one, you're paying 8, plus here's the appraisal fee, here's the lender fees, here's the origination fees.
Yeah, break it
You're
down.
paying
Your actual is
$2,500.
10. Yeah.
It's actually, ours is better,
Right.
you know? So,
I guess I do have one more question. So do you collect the taxes and insurance to make sure that they don't get behind on that, or do you leave that up to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that's just up to you guys. So a lot of people do the taxes and insurance. I typically don't, honestly. So we track it. So I got a VA that goes through every tax period, every insurance. So we have basically a system and a spreadsheet. Here's their insurance documents. Here's when it expires. Make sure it gets renewed. So if it does get renewed, we're reaching out. Hey, your insurance didn't get renewed. You need to renew that. Taxes don't get paid. Hey, you need to pay your taxes, or that's default. So we track it, but we don't escrow it.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's another thing just to, keep in mind. So again, like our payments are just principal and interest only, and they look good, but then also they have to pay insurance and taxes on the side.
Got it.
So the shirt that you're wearing is Iron Deep.
Yeah.
It seems like you're a faith-focused man.
Mm-hmm.
What is Iron Deep? It seems like something that you're almost more passionate about than real estate, just based on your Facebook profile and like the things that you're promoting consistently. Mm-hmm. What is Iron Deep? And just explain it to the viewers.
Yeah. So like I said, about 3 years ago, I was able to step out of the real estate business. So I was thinking about, okay, what's next? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a creator. I want to impact people's lives, do things. I've been involved in a lot of communities, mastermind groups, real estate groups, and thing that I just kind of kept noticing was, guys would become really successful. They would make a lot of money, but something was still kind of missing out of their life. And obviously I'm a man of faith, so I was like, hey man, I love entrepreneurs and love creators. So I want to do a group that involves that type of person, that type A driven personality. A man of faith, so I wanted to have that foundation of speaking that same language, because you guys know, we go to mastermind groups and everyone, we speak the entrepreneur language, but we don't speak that language as much. And then I felt like a group of men, you can speak a little bit of a depth to it that don't get with maybe women in a room. Nothing against women, but just some of the rawness and the vulnerability of what men go through. I wanted that. So that's really what Iron Deep was born out of. We just launched our very first event last year. And like I said, it's basically a business owner, men of faith community, that we get pretty real. We take the masks off, and we just, we try to help each other and sharpen each other in that way. Our next event is in June 25th.
Is that the one in Utah?
This one's actually in northern Georgia. It's in Helen, Georgia. So typically we're undistracted in the mountains somewhere. We rent out a big place. Everyone's sleeping under one roof, so it's not hotels or anything like that. So really just it sets the environment of reflection, of connection that you wouldn't get at a 5-star hotel in San Diego like every other mastermind does.
Mm-hmm. And it didn't look like they were very expensive either. It was like $1,500. How long are they typically?
Yeah. So these are basically 3 nights. So we fly in. That's June 25th to the 28th. So we come in Sunday night. We leave Wednesday morning. So yeah, this one's $2,450. So the one in Georgia. So yeah, it's not very expensive. Like I said, we're just getting started. We're getting people in the door. A lot of people are getting excited about it. But that's kind of what we're doing right now. But our goal is to really just develop that community of men really wanting that in their life, and it's like a brotherhood to really just do life together. Because my experience, I don't know about you guys, but we meet other guys, we meet other entrepreneurs, and we talk business. But then there's that life piece that's just missing. Like I don't really know them, they don't really know me, and this breaks through all that. So
what would somebody expect to get from like what life lessons or what activities are scheduled, or if you can give us some, because I know that like some of it might be confidential, but as far as like what gets covered during that time, and what would someone expect to feel, see, hear, experience, grow from?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's a very real, masks off, and I kind of lead that way. Like, so, I maybe share some things in this group that I've been friends with these guys for years that they did not know, particularly about Brett. So that's the feel of the group, very raw, and it is a faith foundation. So, it comes from the Christian Faith Foundation. So there is worship there is fellowship, breaking bread together. We do some activities that kind of, break down the walls, I guess, and get people, I guess, radically honest with themselves. I would probably describe it as that. Is a lot of times we hear these lies, we're honestly lying to ourselves, and it really just breaks down the walls for people to get really radically honest with themselves, and in an environment that it's safe to get radically honest with other people that are really going to be there to encourage them, to support them, to not share with other people outside of that. And that's the feel of it. So what people learn, I mean, like I said, the Faith Foundation, we do, obviously it's all entrepreneurs and business guys, so it is business focused and leader focused. But even outside of that, I mean, some of these guys are suffering in their own four walls of their homes, right? Their families are suffering. So, we might dig into that. And then their health, it's got a health component too. So really it's the foundation of faith, finances and business, family and health. Those are the four areas that we're like really digging into.
Where did the words iron deep, where did that come from? Is it like scripture based, or is it, what do the words mean?
Yeah. So it kind of goes from the Proverbs, iron sharpen iron, friend sharpens a friend. So that's where iron comes from. Men get that. We're like, I want to sharpen other men. I want to be around other men. If you ask every man, like, how many really deep men friendships do you have? And if they really think about it, a lot of them will say 0, right? Like nobody. So really it kind of breaks through that. So iron sharpens iron comes from the Bible and the Proverbs. Deep is really just from just that deep relationship with God and each other. So that's really what it comes out to, that deep connection.
Awesome.
So.
And how many events have you done so far? You say you started a year ago. How many events have you done in that time frame?
So our first event was just in last September of 2022. So we've only done one.
That's awesome.
We just started launch. We had about 26 guys at our first one. This one in Georgia, like I said, this is not going to be a big group. Max 30 people really is how much we can have. That's max. So yeah, it's not a big group. Very intimate. We're not looking to fill up 300-person stadium or just conference rooms. That's not what this is. This is about we're living under one roof, eating together, living together, fellowshipping together. So you get to know people pretty well.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. Yeah, we've done some self-development seminars similar to that. So yeah, it's been very helpful for development and then for just self-awareness. So yeah, it's crazy because you think 3 days, you're like, 3 days. I mean, what can you do in 3 days? And then you go do this stuff and you're like, man, I haven't done this my whole life.
Yeah, it seems like, and it's time is so slow. Mm-hmm. It's like, because you're undistracted and it's just like, man, this day seems like it was a week. Mm-hmm. And you just crazy. We're so rushed and hurried and just going from this to that. And I am too. Just to get undistracted for 3 days, spending time with other guys like-minded, it's pretty awesome and pretty impactful, as you guys know.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
So it looked like you were a family-focused man too. You've got your wife Karen, 4 children. Wow. Compared to a lot of people, that's a lot of kids anyways. I mean, I know back in the day, it used to be popular to have big families, but you got a big family.
Yeah.
How do you manage all of that? How do you, what is your advice to someone on relationships, on keeping a good family unit, that sort of thing?
Yeah. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't always get it right. I would say that there's been ups and downs in my family life, and that's just the life of a business owner, entrepreneur, right? And everyone, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to balance it. I'm not perfect. But the things that I have learned is, I heard a guy one time had gone through a family divorce and just a lot of that stuff. And I've had some stuff like that. My oldest daughter came from a previous relationship. Was not married at that time. We never got married, but just a co-parent in the last 16 years, she's 16 now, has been a struggle. So I know what that's like. That's one of the reasons why I moved to Fort Wayne, is because of that situation. So it's a struggle. It's tough. But I heard one guy, again, just going back to that, he said he was a very successful business guy, but had gotten divorced. The business had taken him and, taken his energy and his health and just his marriage. Like, he was so focused on business, he let this kind of fall, right? And he said, there is no public success that will ever replace private failure, right? And I just remember that, because you can be successful, you can be on the podcast, you can be on stage, you can be doing all this stuff, but if something is crumbling at home, which is like most of your life is there and behind those closed doors that no one ever sees, is it worth it? And I started to ask myself that, is it really worth to make $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, whatever that sacrifice is going to be? But if if this is not sweet inside of my home, if I'm neglecting my wife or my kids, and my relationship with my wife is roommates, and we are not intimate together, and we're not talking about that, and our kids don't even want to be around us, like, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. Now, can you make $1 million, 10 million, 100 million? And if you can do that and still have that sweetness inside your home, I'd say go for that. But it has got to be your priority, because it's not worth it. Ask any man. Ask any man. I mean, I think Bill Gates. Ask Bill Gates, right? Ask him. Billionaire. Was it worth it? Maybe he sacrificed some things with his marriage, and sometimes that. Ask the billionaires that sacrifice everything and end up, in that situation. So I would just say, how do I do it? You've got to be intentional. You got to make it a priority. I do not get it right most of the time, but I got to take a step back, and that's where these things, I got to reflect what is most important in my life. How can I be intentional about these relationships? It's not always the most sexiest thing, and but it's worth it. At the end of the day, it is worth it. So,
so you've had a lot of success over the years. You seem to have a genuinely humble posture. Was there ever a time when you did get an ego where you're like, dude, I'm something, I'm starting to do well, and then you had to kind of wrestle with that and then go back to self-reflection? And is it up and down, or have you leveled it off? Or walk us through that, if that ever happened.
That's a great question. Yeah, man, I was let's see, I bought my first house in 2007. I was about 27, I guess. 27 years old about. I'm 43 now. Yeah, I was an egomaniac. I came from a teaching world. I was making $13,000 as a substitute teacher. Then the next year I made 100. Then the next year I made 400 or something. So you go that fast, that quick, you think you're just invincible, and you want to brag about it to everybody. So I remember bragging. Remember just thinking I was just the crap, right? And I got humbled. Honestly, it was my relationship that ended. So I was with my daughter's mom for about 4 years. My daughter was 2, and then had the big house, nice car, boat, everything. And then she ended up leaving, and that was a private failure for me. I was like, man, I got all this stuff, and I'm alone. I'm alone, right? And that was just this huge wake-up call for me, and that's really what brought me to faith. Honestly, I was 30 at that time. It brought me to faith. So my advice is this. The greatest business lesson, the greatest business virtue, I think, is humility. And humility is so hard. You can't wake up and force humility. Oh, man, I just need to be humble today. Need to think about other people, because you're so selfish. Deep down, you are a selfish person. So you got to fight it every single day. And you got to think about, okay, how can I put other people first? And you got to be intentional. And it's so sweet when you start thinking about other people. It's so sweet when you do something and you see them win. And it's just contagious. So so thank you for saying that. I am not humble to the core. I am a pretty selfish person. I gotta fight against it. I gotta be intentional for that. But I think, if you read Good to Great, he says the greatest virtue is humility. If you think of the greatest companies, it's because they have a leader that is humble, that constantly thinks about their clients or their team, other people focused. So that's the greatest. If you have an ego, you're going to get knocked down. We all are going to get knocked down. If you think you're the crap, this is all temporary, guys. I mean, your money's temporary, everything's temporary. So you will get knocked down one of these days, and you're going to get humbled. So I would just say start now.
Yep.
And we're all people. I've interviewed people on the podcast that are billionaires. And I'm just like, dude, this guy, he's just a person. He just has the same feelings that I have.
Yep.
So
what would you say is like a tactic? So like, like you said, you can't just wake up and force yourself into humility.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I'm honestly struggling with right now I'm like going through it. I'm like, man, why do you need recognition? Why do you need credit? Like, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm working with some of our acquisitions guys because, he's 19 years old. He made almost $200,000 last year. So then same thing happens for him. He went from making no money to making a stupid amount. So then I'm helping him with it too. And it's something that he's struggling with. So what are some tactful ways that you found that like you do force yourself into that? Because it honestly is a conscious decision at the same time. But
yeah. I'd say force yourself to be in situations that make you humble or uncomfortable. So one of the things that I've done, I've taken my daughter on these, that we do mission trips to Guatemala. Now, if you want to humble yourself and you think you got problems, go to mission trips, go to third world countries. The people that live on the dirt, they have no concrete floors, they have no bathroom, they're pooping in the ground. They're just start putting yourself in those situations, and that really humbles yourself real fast. So that's one thing I've done. But just on a day-to-day level, I would just say, obviously, the cliche, try to be grateful for what you have. It's easier said than done. Cause we wake up and we got, 5 fires to put out with houses and clients and sellers. And we're like, oh, my life today's terrible. And but you look at it and you're like, well, no, it's not, it's great. So just trying to do that. I just say, is there intentional, and I think you guys did this, you did this on my podcast, is there intentional things that you can really do to pour in other people just to try to take the focus off yourself? And that's this thing I try to figure out, okay, how can I put mine in a position to pour in other people, whether it's my team, and start talking about their dreams, their goals, what do they want? And it takes you back. Like, it's like, oh, what is your, like I talked to one of my team members, he's my acquisition manager, what's your dream? Like, I remember this is like 4 years ago. I talked to my acquisition manager, what's your dream? He's like 32. And he's like, man, I've always just wanted to own a home. My family, I grew up, we've never owned a home, ever. I want to own a home. And I was like, I didn't know that. And he got to build his first house.
Wow.
So I got to see that. And I got to celebrate with him. And then it turned into, man, I would just want to own a rental. I just want to own a rental property. I'm buying houses for you guys all the time. I just want to own my own rental. And then he got to own his own rental. And I financed it for him. Just start doing stuff like that and just seeing, just start opening up people's dreams and can you help them with it? I would just start doing stuff like that.
Now I got another question. Sorry, I keep asking. Most of these questions are for me now, honestly, at this point. But hopefully it'll help other people too. So I've actually been doing that. And have you ever felt any, I don't know the right word, but like almost pressure or burden? Because now I'm taking on 7, 8, 9 other people's dreams and aspirations. And then now I feel like it's my responsibility to now make sure that they accomplish those. And so then I'm now feeling the burden of all that to where now I feel like I have to accomplish it for all of them. And so then I'm like, dang, like I want to help them do that, but it's like also taking away my life in another sense to where I'm like, now I'm doing this for other people and now I can't even live my life. Have you ever experienced that at all? Or
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. Yeah, that's a tough. Leadership's a burden. I think a guy said that one time. I think his name is Patrick Lencioni. He put a book out there called Motive. So he wrote some of the books. He wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? And just books like that. He wrote a book called Motive. What is your motive as a leader? A lot of people want to be leaders. People don't want to be followers. They want to be leaders. They want to be seen. They want to be recognized. They want to be on stage. But their motive behind leadership is for those reasons. Real leaders, it's a burden because it's heavy sometimes. Because you are taking on their burdens. You are taking on their dreams. Now you can't do it for them. I think you got to sometimes separate yourself. Like you can't want it more than they do. We do. We want it more than they do. Like, because we know what it takes. We know the sacrifice, and we know that they can live up to that, live out their dreams, and we want it more than they can. And that, I think you have to separate yourself. You can't want it more than them. But I will tell you that if you're going to be a leader, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you desire to be a leader, and you can say, this is a burden, because leadership is a burden. People want to follow you, and you want to impact people. Maybe take the recognition out of it and just say, this is a burden, because if I really want to impact people, it's like I need to, sacrifice into that. So I don't know the answer to that. I still struggle with that, because I want it more than my team. I want it more than other people. But at the same time, like, you do have a business to run. You do have to make the numbers work. And at the end of the day, I guess you can't want it more than they want it. Mm-hmm. And if they want these dreams, then that's great. Let's think about the math problem, but they still have to put in the time, the work, the sacrifice. And if they're not willing to do that, then, you can't. You got to stop somewhere and draw that boundary. You got to draw the boundary somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that helps you or not. Probably not, but I still struggle with that a lot.
Well, we're getting close to the end here. Do you want me to ask him the final question? Okay. So this is a question we ask everybody at the end. And it is your final day. So let's see. You're 43 now? Mm-hmm. All right. So 57 years from now, you're 100 years old. You're on your deathbed. You're dying.
That's pretty old for...
You made it. Made it all the way to 100. And everybody that you love is around you. You're dying, and you have a final message to the world. It could be a billboard in Times Square. It could be your memoir.
I wasn't prepared for that.
It could be a sentence, a mantra. It could be a quote that means a lot to you. But this is your final message to the world. This is your last bit of knowledge that you think that the world needs to hear. And what is your legacy? What's your legacy message? What comes up? You can just trust your unconscious mind. Just let it come to you.
There you go. Now it's good. Yeah, man, that's a great question. I don't have like the billboard answer. Probably, I've studied this a lot though. And I love listening to these things. I love listening to, what are the 5 biggest regrets of dying people? They did a survey of 95 years old. I think that the requirement was they had to be 95. Like, what's your biggest regrets? And obviously, the number one, the regret that we all fall into the trap of that is not on there is, man, I wish I would have worked more. I wish I would have worked more. That's not on there. Way far from it. So I know that's not on there. I think the biggest regrets, though, the people is, number one, I would say, get radically honest and just be true to yourself. I think the number one regret is people were not true to themselves. I think the biggest regret that I've had over the 16 years is I continuously try to please other people. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to win the approval of other people and to do things because other people might applaud me or whatever, and I sacrifice so much for this other people, and honestly, at the end of the day, no one really cares that much. So be true to yourself, and so get radically honest and be true to yourself. I think, but more than that, I think that people play it safe. I think people play it safe, and I think one of the biggest regrets is I wish I would have just taken more risks. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big risk taker. Like, I risk it. I put it all on black, not gambling advice. Like, let's go all in. Let's just go for it. Let's do it. I don't care. Let's just risk it all. And that's just me. That's my personality. My wife, she likes to play it safe. So I say, just risk it. What do you got to lose? Stop wasting your time on non-essential stuff and just risk it all for what you really want. Because you live once, you got one race, and why not go all in? I just say that.
Awesome.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that is it, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Tony, Dakota, appreciate it.
How can our listeners get a hold of you? Is there anything that you want to pitch, like Iron Deep? Do you want to give them that website URL?
Yeah.
They're a Christian man listening, want to do a retreat?
Yeah, I'd say, man, if you're in that seasoned business owner, man, that whether you're a Christian or just interested in faith, doesn't have to be. We've had people that aren't and still come. I'd say irondeep.com is one of the best places. Check out our website, irondeep.com. And in our real estate, we're called Simple Wholesaling. So we have simplewholesaling.com, and you can email me at Brett, BRETT, at simplewholesaling.com, and go from there. So yeah, both of those. So real estate wise, Simple Wholesaling. But yeah, one of my passions is just the Iron Deep. So
Awesome.
yeah, thanks guys.
Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with our viewers?
Actually, you guys are awesome.
Thanks.
So keep listening to this podcast. And go all in. Stop wasting time and just start moving forward. Just take one step in front of the other. I think we're all in this season of I don't care who you are. You might have been like me doing it 16 years. You might be doing it 30 years. You might just be getting started and you're like, I'm just trying to figure it out. And I'll just say we're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what's going to happen and I'm just trying to figure it out what the next move is. So like you're not alone, whether you're new or 30 years in. I just say we're all trying to figure out, okay, what's our next step? And let's just go all in. Let's do it. There you go.
Cool. Thanks again for coming on, man. Yeah, I got so many notes. And so I'm sure that honestly, I got a lot of value out of this. And so hopefully a lot of other people did too. So yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah,
and,
thanks guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.